Hey guys, it's Lila, and I'm back with Chapter 5 of Francine Poulette Meets the Ghost Raccoon. So at the end of Chapter 4, Francine Poulette is in the hospital with a broken arm and a broken leg. And she tells Miss Bissinger some very interesting news and says that she is going to quit. So let's begin Chapter 5. Time passed. First the cast came off of Francine's arm. Then the cast came off of her leg. Francine walked with a limp and a cane. Sometimes her leg ached. Sometimes her arm ached. But she was healed. Sort of. And so early one morning in September, Francine walked into the Animal Control Center and turned in her uniform. "What is the meaning of this?" said Mortis Toofer, chairman of the board of the Animal Control Center. Mortis Toofer wore a brown corduroy suit and a brown and orange toupee. The toupee had always disturbed Francine. It reminded her of a chipmunk pelt. "I quit," said Francine. "What are you saying to me?" said Mortis. He adjusted his chipmunk toupee. "I'm saying I quit," said Francine. "You have battled many a snake and outwitted many a squirrel," said Mortis. "You have stared a bear, that dark and ferocious mystery, in the eye, and that dark and ferocious mystery blinked first." "True," said Francine. "And now you have reached this impasse of the soul, this gloomy, doomy time of self-appraisal. I wonder, will you dwell here in your small shame and sad defeat? Will you truly allow yourself to be undone by one ignoble screaming raccoon?" "Yes," said Francine. Mortis Toofer shook his head. His toupee slipped a little. "Unbelievable," he said. He shook his head again. He righted his toupee. "I am deeply saddened," he said. "Deeply saddened, yes. It is the end of an era. It is the end of an era that began with Nanette Poulette and continued with Clement Poulette, and now it ends. It ends. The era ends with a dull, inharmonious thud. It ends with Francine and a raccoon." "Can I have my trophies?" said Francine. "I am afraid that the trophies must remain here," said Mortis. "Property of Gisford Animal Control Center, procured under the auspices, etc., etc., and etc." He smiled a sad smile. "Right," said Francine. "Okay, well, thanks for all the good times." Mortis Toofer raised his right hand and waved goodbye. "The end of an era," he said. "The end." Francine Poulette walked out of the Animal Control Center. She did not look back. But that evening, Francine limped to Fleecker Street and hid in a rhododendron bush. She studied Mrs. Bissinger's house. She watched the dust turn into a velvety darkness. She watched as a gibbous moon rose in the sky and shone on Miss Bissinger's empty, extremely tall, and extremely steep roof. There was no raccoon in sight. "You weren't even a ghost," said Francine to the empty roof. "You were just a raccoon." I panicked, and Poulettes never panic. "Why are you hiding in my rhododendron?" said a voice. Francine looked up. Miss Bissinger was standing above her, bejeweled and gleaming. "I am not hiding," said Francine. "And so on." "And so on," agreed Miss Bissinger. She sighed. She twinkled. "It is time to move on, Francine. The raccoon is gone. You must go too." "Okay," said Francine. Miss Bissinger walked away. Francine continued to crouch in the rhododendron bush. She looked away from the roof, up into the dark sky. She could see some stars, but not many. Shouldn't there be more stars? The world seemed very dark. Her arm ached, and her heart. Francine's heart ached too. She did not know who she was. She was not an animal control officer. And she was not a Poulette, because Poulettes never panic. "Who am I?" said Francine to the dark sky. There was no answer. "Tell me who I am," shouted Francine. And then from somewhere far away, there came an answer. "Go home, Francine." Francine looked up. Miss Bissinger was standing in a lighted window. "Go home," she shouted again. She waved her arms around. Francine stood up. She exited the rhododendron bush. She went home.